Hello and welcome. A little while ago I did a video on some asymmetric cornet mouthpieces that I have. If you haven't seen that, you can check it out in the link in the video description below. After publishing that video, I had a close friend of mine loan me an actual Wedge cornet mouthpiece, and this is it here. If you're not familiar with wedges, then you either don't have social media or don't have the internet or some other combination, because everyone that I know who I've had this conversation with, all two people, have been absolutely splattered with adverts for the Wedge mouthpiece. The Wedge mouthpiece, to summarize, is an asymmetric mouthpiece, where its asymmetry lies in the fact that the mouthpiece rim is not a perfectly flat, perfectly round surface. There's a dot there and there's a dot on the other side of the mouthpiece. They are the high points. And then in between on the edges of the rim there is some low points. Now those low points don't follow the contour of your face, they go on the sides of your mouth. And so I'm guessing the idea is that the pressure is centralized right in the center of your embouchure, and the rest of your mouthpiece has a little bit less pressure on it, and I guess to give you some more flexibility with the way that you can bend the pitch around, do some vibrato and things like that. So that's what the Wedge is. Now, my standard cornet mouthpiece for standard cornets is my Denniswick Heritage 5B. This is a gold-plated mouthpiece that, as I said, is my standard go-to for standard cornets. I use that phrase, standard mouthpiece for standard cornets, because my standard cornet is not standard. This is my go-to cornet. This is a 1906, from memory, Conqueror cornet, gold plated, that was sent to me by a absolutely wonderful specimen of a human. And this is a non-standard cornet. It's 115 years old. The mouthpiece that I use for this particular instrument is also 115 years old. But if I was to play any other cornet, I would use this mouthpiece. So for this video where I compare the Wedge, I'm going to be comparing it to this modern Denniswick 5B. Looking at these mouthpieces, there are some fairly obvious differences that are going to add variables to my impression of the Wedge. First thing is that the size difference. Their lengths are different. This mouthpiece sits further down into the mouthpiece, into the lead pipe of the instrument, than my Denniswick does. And as a consequence of that, it's going to have different characteristics as far as slotting is concerned, as far as some flexibility elements are going to be concerned. The next thing is the Wedge is a two-part mouthpiece where the receiver can be removed, so that you could put on a flugel receiver or you could put on a trumpet or whatever you like. So this is a removable receiver. But both of these components have a lot more mass to them than the Denniswick does. These are heavier. This is a heavier mouthpiece. And as a result of it being heavier, it's going to perform differently, irregardless of the fact that it has an asymmetric rim. So the extra mass generally will mean that the instrument will be a little bit more efficient. More of the energy that you put into one end is going to come out projected through the other end. The propagation of the sound wave and your vibration through the instrument is going to be different. Generally better, but your mileage may vary depending on the mouthpiece and depending on your own personal preferences. So, forewarned is forearmed. These mouthpieces are going to feel different. My job is going to be to see if I can isolate the differences caused only by the asymmetry in the rim, and not the differences caused by the mass and the other construction elements of this. So this is going to be a bit of a hard task, but I'll do what I can. So I'll just play some notes and some extracts and just some things on the Denniswick, because a part of this will be to see whether you guys can tell any difference yourself. So let me know what your thoughts are. But first I'll play a little bit with my Denniswick Heritage. And now we'll do a similar thing with the wedge. So from those extracts plus some of the off-camera work that I've done, the biggest difference that I can feel is something that I attribute to the mass. The fact that this mouthpiece is a lot heavier gives it different playing characteristics. It feels as though the instrument is louder. I don't like the sound that it produces as much to my ear when I'm playing. That may not necessarily mean it sounds worse as far as the recording and what other people hear, but to my ear whilst I'm playing, I don't like the sound quite as much. And it also feels a little bit more exposed playing. I'm not quite as sure about where my notes are going to end up. I suspect some of those things I could bring under control again if I had some more time with this mouthpiece, but moving on to the stuff that I attribute just to the wedge itself, I would say that I have a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more control as far as my vibrato is. I feel a little bit more in control of the pitch that my instrument is producing. The pitch and the flexibility of my vibrato feels to be a little bit more locked down with the heritage than it does with the wedge, and I would attribute that pretty much only to the asymmetry in the mouthpiece design. So that would be sort of some of my first thoughts of playing. I'll be interested to know if anyone out there has any thoughts about what it sounded like through my recording equipment and the brilliance of your speakers and the YouTube media experience. What I might do actually though is that I might see if I can get a UFO version of the wedge mouthpiece and try it out on a UFO, because I'm not really a cornet player. My main instrument at the moment is euphonium, and so that's the instrument where I am the most sensitive to the instrument and the mouthpiece. So I might actually do that. So let me know if you think that would be worthwhile, getting a UFO version of the wedge if they make one. I'm not actually 100% sure if they do or not. And I could actually do a proper review of that. Who knows whether that would be a good idea. Anyway, thank you very much for watching.